Comrades, I think as we can really feel, taste from the reports tonight, there's huge, explosive changes happening right underneath our feet. There's a time of great turmoil, and it is being pushed by the, they're both natural, not natural, disasters that there's no response for. There's huge ferment, which Monica just described so well, that goes into the NFL, but through every layer of society now. Now, for us, always the challenge for Workers' World is how to knit struggles together, how to pull together and always show kind of a common link, as much as that's possible. And it's not an easy thing to do, and it's not something that happens naturally ever. The ruling class has been able to hold its power for years, decades, hundreds of years by keeping everything separated. And there are times, though, when it kind of all comes together. And I think we can really see that, and especially over the summer when we look at what happened in Charlottesville and we look at what happened in Durham. Now, I wanted to really touch on what Berta was raising on Puerto Rico, because anyone here who's thinking about it, particularly if they're connecting it to the war and to the military and to the Pentagon, can't help but think about this enormous amount of sheer equipment that exists right now in the Caribbean. I mean, there's giant aircraft carriers, there's hundreds of destroyers, there's tens of thousands of generators, there's Quonset huts and air conditioning units and all kinds of things that could be airlifted in a minute's notice. There is fuel, there are planes, there's ways of evacuating people en masse, along with hundreds and hundreds of cruise ships that simply could be commandeered. But none of this happens. Instead, Trump says, well, you know, it's an island. It's not so easy. I mean, they can move equipment halfway around the world overnight. And we should never let them forget that it's not like this equipment has to be put together in some complicated way. They keep it packaged all the time. If they want to move 100,000 troops overnight, they brag about being able to do it, and they do it every time they hold a war game. So it's not like it's not there to be done. So when there's a crime happening, like the crime in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands and throughout the Caribbean, really, right now, it's the crime of not ordering what's right there and able to do. So we want to link some of these issues together and show, along with calling for canceling the debt, that they have the ability to do this. But they don't. They don't. Now, we could look at this from another part of the world, too. If you're anywhere in Asia right now, you're fixated on Korea and the actual, very real fear that the U.S. could launch an attack. And the threats from Trump at the UN, here he is speaking to the world and declaring that the U.S. could wipe Korea off the planet. I mean, it was a pretty horrendous threat. And you can imagine how it was viewed not only in the DPRK, in South Korea, but how does that in China, in Japan, throughout Asia. So there's big changes, there's big ferment, and we don't know at what moment things come together, but sometimes as a party we're trying with others to show that these issues are very much linked. We want to also look at the threats on Venezuela and throughout Latin America and really be looking for ways to address them. We want to bring in, right now, the U.S., and it's a U.S. war, every aircraft, every Navy ship in Yemen, there's 700,000 cases of cholera now in Yemen. I mean, the scale of that, these are UN figures. We can't sort of even wrap our heads around. So I raise some of these issues, and at the same time, how do we link it to the war right here? When there is a new level of fight back, we look at the inspiration of our own comrades in Durham, who really made a historic contribution to the struggle. So they face the same thing. How do you have pushback from Charlottesville by doing something bolder and even more daring? Now, there's this demonstration that was called originally by a whole number of groups. Lots of people signed on to it, signed a statement of support for October 7th, being the anniversary of the U.S. war in Afghanistan, saying that the wars since then have been nonstop. And at any given moment, the U.S. is at war with 7 countries at any time, every week. It changes at sometimes far more countries, but any given week. So it was a call for demonstrations across the country. In a number of cities, it was really picked up on. But what was interesting was here in New York, and very much a strong push from International League of People's Struggles, from Bayan, who was linking and calling other groups together, including a new coalition that's set up by Students for Justice in Palestine called the Right to Resist War and Empire. It's young activists. And also UNAC, which we really have a history with. UNAC, United National Anti-War Coalition, is very much part of this and pushed hard over years in the movement to say the war is at home and abroad. We want to bring that up every single time. Also, who signed on to it is People's Power Assembly and Shut It Down and Hoods for Justice. Very much No Du Tol, Korean organization. Within just a few days, there were 35 groups who signed on, but a number of them have raised separately. Something bigger should happen. Something that links some of these struggles really should happen. So this is an effort to try, and Palestinian youth are very much part of this. Korean activists are part of it. So we very much want everyone here to think about what you can do to help in terms of participating on this demonstration next Saturday, both coming to it, helping on signs, seeing if there are other groups who should endorse, helping on some of the literature for it too. How do we make these links in a real way? Because almost any piece of literature could be pulled together and included and given out. We, of course, very much want to have a strong distribution of Workers' World newspaper. We want to have something on our conference right there that's given out to these activists. So it's a challenge every time to build again and again demonstrations that are linking issues together. It never comes easily. It's always a conscious struggle, even in shaping this and calling it a rally to resist war and racism. Well, let's just have an anti-war rally. Can't do that in this period. Absolutely can't, never should, but absolutely now, not even a question. The slogans for it also were very interesting, just even how they were shaped with such enthusiasm. The first slogan is No to Racism, White Supremacy, Black Lives Matter. That's a good step forward for an anti-war and anti-racist demonstration, to open with that. Stop the attacks on migrants, refugees, and Muslims. Bring the troops home and close the bases. That comes after. We're going to address the war right here, and the sanctions and the threats, and we need jobs, education, and health care, not war. The demonstration is next Saturday, October 7th, next Saturday. And it's gathers at 34th Street and 6th Avenue at 1 o'clock.